Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to the first monotype hardcore Nuzlocke that I'm going to attempt. Now, I've actually done quite a few hardcore Nuzlockes in the past. That basically takes into account a normal Pokemon Nuzlocke and adds a few extra twists to it. The basic Nuzlocke rules are, we can only catch the first Pokemon on each route. If a Pokemon faints, we have to release it. And if we white out at any time, the run's over. We have to restart from the beginning. Now, playing this in hardcore mode means we have to play on set mode instead of switch. We can't level our Pokemon past the gym leader's ace, and we're not allowed to use items in battle. Now, because we're only using grass-type Pokemon, I'm able to keep encountering Pokemon on the same route until we find one that's grass. If there's no grass Pokemon on the route, well then, we don't get an encounter there. So, without any further ado, let's dive into this Pokemon Sapphire hardcore Nuzlocke with grass types only. Oh, and make sure you enjoy. Pokemon Sapphire was my very first Pokemon game I ever played. And for that reason, I figured what better way than to start with a little nostalgia. Now, while Pokemon Sapphire and Ruby have plenty of new Pokemon, there's actually only a limited amount of grass types. Being able to start with Trico is nice, as it evolves into one of the fastest Pokemon in the game. And the dual typing of Pokemon such as Lotad, Tropius, Cradily, Cacturne, and Breloom mean that we end up having good type coverage overall. Grass types do have a common weakness, however, with fire and flying types being fairly common throughout the game, which means that gym leaders such as Flannery and Winona, they're going to be big issues. Ludicolo is our Sapphire version exclusive, which means Nuzleaf, well, it'll be unobtainable for us. After getting shipped with our luggage in the back of our moving truck to our new home of Littleroot, and having our mom test us on our analog clock reading skills, it was time to head out. After finally introducing ourselves like the good new neighbors we are, we finally get to save this old man running in the woods and get our first grass type, Trico. Trico had no trouble beating up a wild Poochyena, and the old man decided it was okay that we could keep it. Turns out he's some professor or something. I don't really know. We named our new friend Maui Wowie and headed off to beat up the professor's daughter or something. We did a little bit of training along the way and ended up getting Maui Wowie up to level 8 before taking on May. The first battle went pretty much how you'd expect, with a few pounds from us and a few growls from Torchic, and May went down without much trouble. The professor then handed us the Pokedex and May handed us her balls, and then we were ready to get going to catch our first Pokemon. Now in Sapphire, the grass-type Pokemon are spread out between the early and mid games, with none of them being available after the 6th gym. So we had a bit of catching to do before our first gym battle. After a little back and forth with a rogue Lotad, we finally were able to catch it and get our first addition to the team. We ended up naming it Blue Dream. Comment below if you can figure out the naming theme we're using. Lotad is an amazing Pokemon for this run because it has the dual water typing, which gives us some much needed neutral typing against fire, which would otherwise incinerate our team. And it also has water type moves to deal with. Okay, so maybe it doesn't, but when it evolves, it... Level 49 Hydro Pump? That's okay. I'm sure we can get a water type TM for Water Pulse, which the 8th gym leader gives us. Well, at least we can water sport our enemies. After helping Wally catch his first Pokemon and reconnecting with our dad after he left to get milk all those years ago, it was time for our next encounter. This time, it's a Shroomish in Petalburg Woods. We were able to easily capture it and appropriately name it Shrom. We did a bit more grinding to get our Pokemon up to level 15 before taking on Roxanne, and along the way, Blue Dream evolved into a Lombre. Now, I've been spending a lot of time attempting to hardcore Nuzlocke Emerald Kaizo, which is one of the hardest Pokemon games out there right now. So I know that Roxanne can really be tough to beat, and I bet... Oh. Well, that went a little differently. We took our shiny new badge and walked outside to witness a snatch and grab in progress, and decided to go investigating. Along the way, Maui Wowie evolved into a Grovyle, and we handily defeated the villainous Team Aqua Grunt to get back the goods, Pico the Wingle, and became best friends with the president of a multinational company who then decided to entrust an important package to a 10-year-old child to deliver to the champion of the entire Pokemon region. Yeah, I don't even know anymore. Package in hand, it was time to head off to Doofertown with the wind in our hair and victory on the horizon. It was time for Brawly. The plan? Simple. We were going to use Grovyle to absorb all the damage that was done by Brawly's Pokemon, and stall out the Machop and subsequently the Makuhita by regaining any HP lost. Unfortunately, after a couple bulk ups, I quickly realized that this was not going to work, as the Machop ended up sweeping through first Grovyle, then Shroomish, and finally Lotad, ending our first attempt almost as soon as it had started. After pushing back to Brawly on our second attempt with revenge in our hearts, we settled on a new plan, leading with Shroomish to set up some Leech Seeds, and with a larger defense stat with Grovyle, we should have no issues getting through Brawly's Pokemon. This time it worked like a charm, as Shroomish landed a critical hit on Machop to put us ahead and finish it off with one more Mega Drain. Brawly's ace Makuhita came in, and with Shrom at full HP, we went for another Leech Seed to ensure our victory. Makuhita fell asleep, however, off of some good shrooms he was hitting, and we scored another critical hit. This incredible RNG allowed us to Mega Drain our way to the second gym badge. We swiftly delivered the package to Steven, grabbed the EXP share, which would be pivotal in helping to train our Pokemon, and made our way to Slayport City. It turned out the captain we were delivering the goods to was in a bit of trouble, so we meddled our way into quickly defeating 2 Aqua Grunts, who were then quickly called simps by their leader Archie. Someone should tell him that's not allowed on Twitch anymore. This opened up our path to capture our next addition to the team, our very own Oddish, that took a really long time to find. We caught it without much difficulty and gave it a nickname fitting for a Pokemon such as this, before heading on to our next big challenge, May and her evolved Combuskin. We decided to lead Shroomish against the Whalmer this time, and made quick work of it with a couple of Mega Drains. She then sent in her Combuskin, and we immediately Stun Spored it, followed by a Leech Seed in order to get residual damage and the chance of paralysis every turn. This is why we wanted to knock out the Whalmer with our Shroomish. We were able to stay in another turn, but quickly had to switch into our Lombre, which is of course neutral versus Combuskin's Ember. Luckily it only knew Ember at this point, or we would have been in big trouble. The Ember ended up getting the 1 in 16 chance to crit us, but a Fake Out, followed by a Nature Power and the Leech Seed damage, managed to take it down in the end. But that could have been very bad, and does not bode well for Flannery later on. The Shroomish went down without much trouble, and that allowed the pathway to clear for us to enter Mauville City and get ready for Watson. Before that, however, it was time for one last encounter, a Roselia, who we caught and aptly named Sage, in all caps. After a bit more training, Blueberry evolved into a Gloom, followed quickly by Shrom, evolving into a Breloom, which gave us the much needed fighting type for this upcoming Watson fight. Finally, after a bit of last minute leveling, it was time to take on Watson. I decided to lead Shrom to see if I could one-shot the Magnemite with Mach Punch. Unfortunately, it left him at 1 HP, and he Thunder Waved us to paralyze us. We were so close. A held Cherry Berry, however, cured that paralysis, and Watson burned one of his potions before we knocked out the Magnemite this time. At this point, the Voltorb came in, which is scary due to the fact that it knows self-destruct, so I wanted to make sure I could kill it in one shot and not risk the self-destruct, which the Pokemon loves to do if it's at low HP. The only way to do this was to send in Sage, who knew Growth, and set up as many Growths before using a Mega Drain to take out the Voltorb in one shot. After a few setup turns, I thought we could take it out in one shot, but it left it at just a little bit of HP. Knowing that Watson would go for another potion, I decided to Growth one last time so that we could guarantee the one shot after the potion. Since we were at +3 special attack at this point, I decided to stay in and Mega Drain the Magneton when it came in. And after a few back and forth attacks, the Magneton went down and we secured our 3rd gym badge. We quickly trekked our way up through the mountain to the Ash City of Fallerbird Town, and almost lost our Shrom along the way to a self-destruct from a coughing. Working our way to Meteor Falls, we interrupted a powwow between a scientist and both Team Aqua and Magma before heading up to the volcano to challenge Archie. Archie has a Golbat with a very powerful stab wing attack that we can't resist in any capacity. So, our plan involved having Blueberry out at almost full HP when the mighty animal goes down, in order to have the best chance of surviving the wing attack and putting it to sleep. After barely managing to survive the attack and land our sleep powder, we switched into Lombre, which knew Secret Power. Now, Secret Power is a move that changes based on the terrain that you're standing on, and due to the volcano area that the battle was being fought, this meant that we were using a super effective rock slide against the Golbat. However, even with this move, I don't know if we could have done it if the Golbat didn't sleep for 4 consecutive turns and then miss 2 supersonics for us to take it out. This was a very scary battle, but in the end, we won it. The next part of the game is one of the scariest in the entire run. The 4th gym leader, Flannery, has 3 fire-type Pokemon, which include a terrifying Torkoal. This Pokemon alone can sweep our team, and that's not counting the other 2 Slugmas, all 3 of which know Overheat, which can one-shot any of our Pokemon if used. We need a serious strategy for this fight. The best one that I could come up with, after an absurd amount of grinding on Lotads and Poochyena for their special defense and attack EVs, was to lead Grovyle after grabbing Dig from Falibard Town and attempt to one-shot the 2 Slugmas without taking any damage. Then use the rest of my team to deal with Torkoal. The first part of the battle went relatively according to plan, with the first Slugma using Overheat and going down to the first Dig. The second one did set up a light screen, however, but that didn't really mean anything to our team, due to our plan to use mostly physical attacks. And the second Slugma went down to Dig as well. Now, at this point, the Torkoal was coming in, and I knew I needed to tank 1 Overheat, and the only Pokemon we had who could possibly even attempt this was, of course, Blue Dream. You absolute mad lad! After the first Overheat, Torkoal's special attack is halved, which meant that he would be more likely to use Body Slam. So I switched into Blueberry in order to put it to sleep. Luckily, we connected with our sleep powder, and I decided to switch back into Blue Dream to get another fake out in. Unfortunately, the Torkoal woke up on its second turn and hit us with another Overheat, which left our Blue Dream in the red. After using another fake out, we switched back into Blueberry to set up 1 more sleep powder before, at this point, switching into Sage, because I knew we needed to get some Leech Seeds set up. At this point, the plan was to set up some growths before the Torkoal woke up in order to hit it with as hard of a Mega Drain as we could. But it hit us with a Body Slam on Wake Up, which unfortunately paralyzed us, and then it went for an Attract to make it even harder to hit. At this point, I thought Flannery would go for a heal, so I tried to set up 1 more growth, but unfortunately, it hit us with another Body Slam, and at this point we had to switch out. I switched into Shrom on the potion from Flannery and decided to try to go for Headbutts for the potential to flinch the Torkoal, but it got the 30% paralysis chance on our Breloom after just the first Body Slam. After a few Leech Seeds and Headbutts, however, Flannery used her second potion, and I knew this was going to come down to the last turn. Luckily, the Torkoal ended up getting paralyzed by our Effect Spore, which meant that we could go for Headbutts again. At the last second, it decided to go for Flail, and at 1 HP, that meant that it was hitting for maximum damage, but Shrom, the absolute mad lad, ended up surviving and taking it out with our last Leech Seed to secure us the 4th badge. This was by far one of the hardest fights I've ever had to plan for, even including my Emerald Kaizo runs. But what you're seeing here was actually my 7th attempt at the fight, so we're actually on our 9th attempt at the entire run at this point. Flannery was no joke. Next, it was off to the desert to catch ourselves a Cacnea, which we named Plushberry, as well as pick up the root fossil and watch in horror as we completely drive another Pokemon to extinction as it sinks into the sand. Goodbye, Anorith. We took the fossil back to Rustiboro Town to bring it back to life as a Laleep, which we of course had to name Cherry Pie. At this point, it was time for our dad. The much-fated reunion would go, well, how most battles with your dad in Gen 3 do. Norman loves to use Yawn with his Slaking when he's at full HP, and so all we had to do was equip Chesto Berries and lead off with Blueberry to put the Slaking itself to sleep. Then we could switch into Sage and set up growths until it woke up and used Yawn on us. Unfortunately, the Slaking woke up earlier than we were hoping for, but Sage was able to survive a Facade and get off 1 more growth before taking it out with Magical Leaf. With 6 growths set up, we were now at maximum special attack, and we could unleash the full power of Roselia upon Norman. And with relative ease, we secured ourselves the 5th badge. Next up, it was time to get an actual water-type move for our Grass Water Blue Dream and teach him Surf, which allowed us to travel across the small, tiny waterway that anyone could really swim through. Seriously, Has anyone thought to just swim over to the other side? As we worked our way up to the Weather Institute, Plushberry evolved into a Cacturn, which gave us the much-needed dark typing that our party was seriously missing. And I also learned that Lily can't actually learn any rock-type moves, which is really unfortunate, as that was my main plan for dealing with Winona up ahead. But we made our way to the Weather Institute, handled Aqua Admin Shelly without much trouble, and took on May for the third fated battle. May leads with Whalmer this time, who just spams Water Pulse, so that allows us to set up a bunch of growths and then one-shot all of her Pokemon. It's a relatively simple strategy and one that we're going to employ and abuse for most of the rest of the game. On the last stretch to Fortree City, it was time to catch our final Grass-type Pokemon of the game, Artropius, which we named Juicy Fruit. After helping Champion Steven with a bit of a chameleon infestation, it was time to take on Winona, our second hardest challenge yet. Before actually battling her, however, we needed to travel back towards Dewford Town to make a stop at the abandoned ship. Inside, you can get the extremely valuable TM Ice Beam, which is a 90 base power ice move that does double damage against flying type Pokemon. Finally, with Blue Dream now knowing this powerful move, it was time to hatch our plan on Winona. The battle with Winona was a scary one, with every one of her Pokemon knowing a powerful flying type move that never misses its mark. Every one of our Pokemon was weak to flying type attacks, except for the neutral typing Lileep. However, Lileep's most powerful move is a 30 base power Astonish, which makes it mostly useless for this fight offensively. I knew that Swellow likes to set up double teams, so I figured that I could one-shot it with Blue Dream, and Ice Beam fortunately managed to hit. Winona then sent in Pelipper, which I had the best shot at with Sage. However, I wanted to give Sage a bit of breathing room, so I decided to send in Blueberry to put it to sleep and hope that it would use Protect on the switch-in, which of course it did, and we managed to get that switch-in for free. Unfortunately, Blueberry missed the first sleep powder, but Pelipper luckily missed its supersonic, so we were able to get to put it to sleep pretty trouble-free. We managed to get Sage in, and knowing that we might get a couple of turns, I decided to set up one Growth to boost the power of Giga Drain. After getting it into the red with the first Giga Drain, I knew that Winona would use a Hyper Potion, so I set up one more Growth in order to take out the Pelipper in one hit on the next attack. The Altaria came in next, which is by far the scariest Pokemon on her team. It loves to set up Dragon Dances, which increase both its attack and speed in one go. And of course, it went for it. After landing the Leech Seed to get residual heal and damage off, I decided it was time to switch to Cherry Pie, which was the only Pokemon capable of withstanding an Aerial Ace from Altaria. The downside? Well, we have no attacking power. I went for an Astonish, thinking it would continue to attack me, but to my horror, it set up its second Dragon Dance. At this point, I figured I would have to sacrifice my Lileep, and decided to go for an Acid to try and drop its defense. Unfortunately, this was futile. After seeing the earthquake that it went to, however, I felt that I had some hope, as I knew Blue Dream should be able to theoretically take an earthquake even at +2. Luckily, she did, and after the Leech Seed, Altaria was still in the yellow. Now this was the turning point in the fight. I had two options. I knew that if Altaria went for an attack, I could fake it out and the Leech Seed damage would finish it off, but if Winona used a potion from this level of HP, then I should use the Ice Beam to take it out from full health. But if the Altaria went for an attack and I used the Ice Beam, then it would go first, and there's no way that I could survive a +2 boosted Aerial Ace, but I could outspeed it with the priority fake out and confirm the kill with Leech Seed, thus giving me a flawless victory. But again, if Winona went for the potion, then the fake out plus Leech Seed would mean that Altaria is at full health and could one-shot all of my Pokemon. It was a 50-50. I had one chance, one opportunity, and there was no way I was going to miss. Well, you can't win them all. I guess, well, that's the end of this run. Time for attempt 10. Our 10th attempt. Our 10th. Unbelievably, the Altaria decided to go for a third Dragon Dance, where I'm pretty sure it could have just Aerial Aced to kill Blue Dream without having to risk that at all. But that allowed Blue Dream to use the Ice Beam and finish off the Altaria, which just left the Skarmory. Blue Dream, the absolute monster, finished off the battle, surviving at 3 HP, and secured us our 6th gym badge. That was the craziest gym battle I've had in an extremely long time, but It felt so good to win it. Now that arguably the hardest part of the game is out of the way, it was time to begin embracing our 10-year-old destiny of saving the world, as the adults don't seem to be able to. We made our way down to Mount Pyre and intercepted Archie taking an orb from an elderly couple who live on top of a mountain. We chased him back to Slayport City, but unfortunately we're too late as he managed to get away in a stolen submarine. Then we flew back to Lily Cove City to battle our rival for the final time, but before we did, I wanted to grind up Maui Wowie to evolve into a Sceptile, and then get Blueberry to 35 to learn Moonlight before using the Leaf Stone we had found to get our final evolution, Vileplume. May was up next, who's trained all the way to get a pretty amazing team, but now that we had both Ice Beam and Surf on Blue Dream, she wasn't much of an issue. I led Sage, thinking she would lead with her Wailmer, but unfortunately Swellow came out first. Quickly switching into Blue Dream, I was able to sweep through Swellow, Combuskin, and even Shroomish with a combination of Ice Beam, Surf, and Ice Beam, before I switched her out on Wailmer to clean up with Sage. May, you were an awesome rival, and I appreciate you giving us your balls a long time ago, but it looks like your time in this run is over. It was finally time to hit Team Aqua where they least expected it, their own base. And they sent out almost exclusively Water-type Pokemon, so it was relatively easy road to Admin Matt, who also turned out to be a pushover when you compare him to Flannery and Winona from earlier. And with Archie escaping again in a submarine, it was time to head over to Moss Deep City where we could take on Tate and Liza. Now, Ruby and Sapphire are a little bit easier than Emerald, as Tate and Liza only have 2 Pokemon, a Lunatone and a Solrock, both of whom are weak to grass and water-type moves. I didn't really have too many worries going into this, and I didn't even check their moveset to be completely honest. I simply decided to lead with Maui Wowie and Blue Dream, and Leaf Blade and Surf to confirm the win. And well, that's pretty much exactly what happened, although now that I know Solrock has Flamethrower, I probably would have attacked that Pokemon to confirm that kill first. With TNL behind us and access to our second water move Dive, it was time to save the world from Team Aqua once and for all. As we worked our way through Seafloor Cavern, we pushed Cherry Pie up to level 43, our current level cap for Wallace, so that it would learn Ancient Power, its first and only rock move, and evolve into Cradily, which gave it a massive boost to our damage output. We went down to meet the legendary Kyogre, finally battled Archie, and put an end to Team Aqua's antics, and made our way to Sootopolis City to put an end to the disaster that is humanity once and for all. Once again, the fate of the world was left up to a 10-year-old child, and when we finally came face to face with the legendary water Pokemon of Hoenn, there was only one thing we could do: run away. With the world saved and order restored, it was time to beat up on possibly the easiest battle that we had ahead of us. Our level cap was 43 at this point, but I didn't even bother getting all of my Pokemon up to it, because this was a water-type gym. With entirely grass-type Pokemon, there was no way that we were going to lose this, and with our trusty Maui Wowie to lead the way, we swept through Wallace's Pokemon one after another until we acquired the 8th and final gym badge. With all 8 trophies in hand, it was time to challenge the Pokemon League, a collection of the best trainers the Hoenn region has collected over the years. A cacophony of cheers would soon follow our triumph once we got up this waterfall. We could cement ourselves in history after simply getting through this last Victory Road cave, and we see the exit. Oh, Wally again. This last fight with Wally goes about how every other fight does, and it makes me think that Generation 3 doesn't really have a true rival like you get in Gens 1 and 2. May is a fantastic friendly rival, but Wally just doesn't have the same spark that Gary or Silver do from the previous gens. Regardless, we finish taking care of Wally and get ready to move on to our final challenge, but not before stopping back at the abandoned ship to pick up a Water Stone and doing some training to finally get our team to the level 55 level cap. If you're curious about why level 55, that's because Drake's ace, his Salamence, is level 55, which puts us a little bit above the earlier Elite Four members, but a little bit behind Steven the Champion. And with that, it was time to take everything we've learned and move on to our biggest challenge, the Elite Four. Really quickly before that, I wanted to take a second to thank you for watching the video so far, and if you've been enjoying it and my content, hey, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. It's free, you can always unsubscribe later. I've got a whole bunch of what I think is awesome content, and I think you'll really enjoy it too. Anyways, let's get back into it. Now, with the first battle with Sydney, we'll be slightly above their level, and with the entirely dark typing, it's a relatively simple strategy of getting Shrom in and clicking Sky Uppercut. I knew that Mightyena led with Intimidate, so I decided to go Blue Dream to lead the charge. And after taking out the Mightyena, it was time to switch in Shrom and clean up. 4 button presses later, Sydney was down and we were moving on to Phoebe. The strategy for this fight was the tried and true growth setup strategy, this time with Cacturn. Because physical and special moves are separated by type in this generation, Feint Attack is a special type move and gains the benefits of growth. This means that we are able to set up 3 growths on the lead Dusclops and then sweep through with Feint Attack. But on our 3rd growth, Dusclop hits us with a Confuse Ray. At this point, we had to go for it and try to break through the confusion. The rest of the fight was simply us flipping a coin and trying to get the 50-50 chance that we'd hit them on each attack. Confusion lasted for 4 turns, and we only hit ourselves once, which meant that we got a clean sweep through Phoebe without much issue. Glacia was our next challenge, and when I say this came down to rolling the dice on a 90% accurate fighting type move or possibly wiping to her, I must say that I was more than a little worried. Every one of Glacia's Pokemon have a super effective Ice-type move on 5 out of the 6 of our Pokemon, and 2 of them are Ice-types, which only Shrom has a super effective Fighting-type move for. With this in mind, we managed to miraculously hit every one of our Sky Uppercuts and even one-shot her most bulky Walrein. But we managed to hit every attack, take down Glacia, and move on to Drake. Drake was our penultimate challenge, and our only Pokemon that could really take care of it was our trusty Blue Dream. The savior of both Flannery and Winona, she needed to come through one more time in order to help us get to Steven. After leading with a Fake Out, I one-shot the Shelgon with an Ice Beam, which brought out Flygon because it had a flamethrower attack among its arsenal. Luckily, it used Sandstorm, which allowed us to one-shot it with Ice Beam, and at this point, brought out Salamence. Salamence has a massive attack stat and hits like a train locomotive with its physical attacks. It also knows Air Slash, which is stab boosted for it, and I was terribly afraid of a critical hit on Ludicolo, so I decided to go to Cradily, which has neutral typing, to take a couple hits and retaliate with Ancient Power. After a couple of back and forths, the Salamence went down, and at this point I knew the worst was behind us. Altaria came in, so I decided to go back into Ludicolo to Ice Beam it. Both the Altaria and the remaining Flygon went down in one shot, and with that, Drake was down. It was just our friend Steven left. Now, while in Emerald, Game Freak decided for some reason to replace Steven with Wallace as the champion, which would have made this fight a lot easier. In Sapphire and Ruby, Steven is still the champion, and he has a very powerful team of Steel types, along with a Metagross Ace that hits even harder than the Salamence. If Salamence hits like a train, then Metagross hits more like an intercontinental ballistic missile with Meteor Mash, essentially one-shotting anyone in my team. And remember when I said that Blue Dream only really had one more thing to do and take us through Drake? Well, I guess I forgot to mention that it also has to do the same thing here and take us through Steven. I knew that Steven's Skarmory likes to set up Toxic on the first turn, so I figured I could take it out relatively worry-free with Blue Dream. After a Toxic and 1 layer of Spikes, Toxic of course cured by our Pecha Berry, the Skarmory was down. Our Maldo came out next as it has Aerial Ace, which is super effective, but we were able to outspeed and one-shot it with Surf. Cradily came in, and a similar thing happened with our Ice Beam, except it took us 2 hits instead of 1. The Cradily was able to get off a Sludge Bomb, which brought us down to almost half HP, but luckily we avoided the Poisoner. That could have gone really bad. Claydol came in and hit us with a not very effective Earthquake, which allowed us to use Surf to bring it down to 1 HP. Steven used a full restore, and we brought it down to 1 HP again. After a second full restore, we missed the one-shot for the 3rd time, and Steven even used a 3rd full restore. But this time, we managed to hit the roll and take out the Claydol with the final Surf. With only 2 Pokemon left, I knew I would need Shrom or Blue Dream to take out Aggron, so I was able to throw my entire team at this Metagross. My first line of defense was setting up a Leech Seed on it, and knowing that it had Psychic as an attacking move, I decided to go with Plush Berry in the hopes that it would use Psychic, and we could switch in for free. Luckily, it did. I went for the Leech Seed, but unfortunately, Metagross dropped the meteor on our heads and took us out in one shot with a critical hit, our very first loss of the run. I brought in Sage knowing we would outspeed it and luckily managed to connect on our Leech Seed before also going down to a meteor mash from the sky. At this point, we were fully seated and I needed to stall for a little bit, so I brought in Maui Wowie to take up some turns. We had taught it Detect when it was leveling up, and so we were able to stall one turn with Detect and another one with Dig, before also going down to a Meteor Mash. This Metagross was not taking any prisoners, but I couldn't risk using Blue Dream or Shrom until the last minute, so I had to send in Cherry Pie one last time to go down from another fist from the sky. With all of my options gone and this towering monstrosity of mind-bending steel in front of us, I had one option. Send in Blue Dream and hope that we could surf our way to the soft shores of victory. She came in, and to my horror, Steven still had one more full restore in his arsenal. Surf ended up dealing over half of its health, and after tanking a Psychic, which dropped our special defense, we took down the Metagross and were left with the final Pokemon between us and victory. Knowing that we would outspeed, I decided to go for a Surf, hoping that it would one-shot, and to my incredible joy, we did. Defeating the Aggron, taking down Steven, and winning ourselves this Pokemon Challenge. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of how I beat my first Grass-type only hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Sapphire. If you did enjoy it and want to watch these live, I'm currently in the middle of an incredibly difficult hardcore Emerald Kaizo Nuzlocke on my Twitch. Links are in the description. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. By the way, this is content month in July, so new videos are out every single day.
Let's do it, Red! I'm putting you in the dirt! Boys!